What is going on, everybody? I'm BobbyFi, back with my man Sheets doing the QL TV show. This is Sheets' first time over here, so we want to welcome him from the BetQL RotoQL family. We've had some requests to get Sheets in the chat in the breakdowns, and we've got him here today. So Sheets, why don't you say hello and give us your first thoughts on the slate. What's going on in your world?
Hey, so yeah, you were kind of like fading in and out of the whatchamacallit, of my voice for a second. I hope I can still hear you.
That's too bad. I don't know where that came from. How about now? How am I sounding?
We'll play it by ear, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. I don't know. It's the first time we've had that run into that problem. What are your thoughts on this slate? What are your thoughts overall from a DFS? Is there any sports bets that you're interested in tonight? Wanted to sort of just get a quick take. We have a game that we have up on the BetQL site right here. It's basically, it's the Pistons game, and the Sixers basically got the Sixers as a 4-star, which is a pretty remarkable bet based on how automatic these BetQL bets have been so far. It's just the Sixers to cover the 11-point spread. I don't like betting double-digit games. If I had to lean one way, I definitely would lean the Sixers direction. But first thoughts on that, and then we'll sort of go game by game, talk about it from a DFS and sports perspective.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to start talking about sports betting again because, as I've mentioned to you before in previous conversation, I used to be really, really heavily into it. And, as you know, as everybody that bets sports knows, the edge is just so thin when it comes to sports betting that all the information you can get, any kind of edge you can get is really, really important. Even like the best sports bettors in the world have a very, very, very small edge. So if you're going to bet sports, I couldn't imagine doing it now without, look, you can make your own models if you want to play that way. But if you're going to want to compete against all the people that are making models and doing things statistically and stuff, I don't have a lot of experience with BetQL personally, but you're going to need, I think, some kind of edge aside from your own just kind of random opinions to even stay close with this. So I'm kind of excited to be involved in learning more about how BetQL comes up with their stuff and their record and things like that. And so the Philadelphia-Detroit thing, again, like for me, I kind of look at all these sports bets as kind of, okay, the line's probably pretty sharp, and I really going to have a reason to like one side or the other. I'd be curious to know kind of statistically why a certain play is a certain play. Like for me, I wouldn't have much of an opinion on Philly-Detroit. Like the way I would look at a Philly-Detroit game, I would say, okay, 12 looks like a number that makes a little bit of sense. The Philadelphia's bad, Philadelphia's good, Detroit's bad. Embiid's back, so he's probably whatever. I guess the way I would analyze it is similarly to the way I would analyze DFS. So I guess Embiid is going to have a decent amount of impact on this game, how many minutes he plays and how hard he goes. So I'd be wondering how of those 12 points that the spread is, how much of that is expecting Embiid to play a full game or something like that. So if we feel as though Embiid just kind of be eased back, maybe Philadelphia is not kind of the greatest 12-point favorite in this spot, So I'm again, that's the way I would kind of look at it. So I don't know, but I don't have these statistical models that BetQL and these other places have. But so I would, if I were sports betting, this would probably be a game I would pass.
Yeah, I understand that perspective. I do want to point out, though, I really have been drawn, especially the 4- and 5-star games, because it's been pretty phenomenal at BetQL since I've been a part of the company. Just to make note of that, actually, we talk about how they've done over the last 3 days. The model's gone 10-0 on 5-star bets. I know this is a 4-star bet, but just wanted to throw that out there. And yesterday, the model was completely undefeated across the entire slate, which is pretty amazing. So look, I trust in what they're doing over here. We called our lock of the day yesterday was the Memphis game going over. We nailed that. We called that on our show actually in the morning, and then we called it again on the BetQL show. And as Sheets was talking over here, I was just going through a little bit of the where the public bets were at. It looks like obviously it's 55% in favor of Philly in this game. The BetQL models has Philly winning this game by 13.5 roughly. That's what the model has. So that's why it's a 4-star bet. Usually 2.5 points is enough to do that. And then with the sharp picks as far as they go, I want to call that up real quick. We haven't quite figured out our perfect backdrop, and we still don't have a producer yet for the show. So we are going to be a little bit off in the meantime. In the meantime, like you look at the sharp bets, slightly in favor of the Pistons today, actually. So that's kind of interesting. From a DFS perspective, and I'll call my lineups up in a little bit, but what are your thoughts like on this game from, we talked about it earlier, but like I've got my percentages up over here. Who are we playing in this game? And then after that, I'll get into the chat for some questions and answers, but I would love to just get your thoughts from a DFS perspective on this game.
So from a DFS perspective, the way the slate is shaping up, there's going to be several kind of 3K center options, maybe one, maybe three. And the first of them comes from this game is going to be Thon Maker at 3,100 with John Henson out. And with Embiid playing, you would think that Detroit would need as much size as possible to stay in this game. So that's why Thon Maker's, at least what I'm looking at, is projecting pretty nicely, and he's going to be pretty chalky, presuming he's one of only two good 3K centers. He's one of three. Maybe it gets a little different, but he's the one that I'm going to be playing, and that in some lineups, and one a lot of other people are going to be playing too. The other thing that you kind of reminded me in the earlier show was that an interesting bit of news is Bruce Brown. Whether he plays or not is going to impact whether you can take shots on some of these other guards, all of whom have kind of upside in their own ways. Jordan McRae, Brandon Knight, both of these guys can be extremely active at times. So if Bruce Brown is out, those two get pretty decent bumps, and I'm going to, at least in my head, and I'm going to kind of take a look at those guys. On the Philly side, the guy who I guess most people are playing is going to be Josh Richardson,
Yep.
And it makes perfect sense to me. As I mentioned earlier, when it comes to coming back from injuries, there are certain types of injuries that I'm a little nervous about and some that I'm not. When someone's coming back from a concussion, the way concussion protocols usually work is you're either in or you're out. And he's coming back from a concussion. I think he's going to be fine, and he's going to get his full complement of minutes. And, he's cheap enough where if there's a blowout risk, I think he'll still be just fine where he is. As opposed to someone like Embiid, who, he's okay at 10-5, but with the downside of the minutes and because of the blowout and the fact that they're probably not going to be particularly up for stomping on Detroit, particularly in this game, I think makes Embiid a little riskier as far as that goes. So that's kind of where I'm at. What I'm interested in, Bobby, is where RotoQL probably comes in a little differently than the rest of the industry on this game and some of the others. That's what I think is pretty important.
Yeah, it's funny because that's actually what I was just calling up right now. With these systems and trying to run multiple screens at once, it's it takes a little bit of a second longer, but I'm actually pulling that up and where they sort of differ in some of these projections versus the industry. I'll get into some actual, just general sports trends that we've got in just a minute, but in the meantime, while I call this up, I'm actually going to just really quickly remind everybody, if you enter the code BobbyFi at BetQL.co, it's 30% off your first month. Keep in mind, it works for a 3-month trial, and you're not locked in for a full year. So I just want to make that clear. Wanted to throw that out there while we got that getting called up. Anyway, the RotoQL projections, which I actually was looking at earlier today, but I want to make sure that nothing's changed because they've actually been a little bit, at times they've been a little bit faster, at times they've been a little bit slower than some of the other sites to adjust. But the initial projections, as we have them right now, have the highest rated player of the day is basically pretty similar. I would say they have Melly a lot higher than you'd think. Kleber would rate as the best point per dollar play on the board. I'm probably giving away too much information, but they also are very, very big fans of Cam Reddish and two guys we like, by the way, 4th and 5th in point per dollar, Bogdanovich and Buddy Hield. Hey, I always love when a play that we talk about who I love and is going to be low owned and all that stuff on these slates, and to see another projection site have them sort of in the same range that you are thinking of them in your own head, it's kind of a relief to see a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing that you gotta, what I would encourage you now that you're really getting heavy into BetQL is remember that some sites, when they're different projections, they differ with everybody. You know what I mean? So what I'm asking about, if someone's different, you got be different on a relative basis. So I'm glad that you put it in terms of your best point per dollar play as opposed to just they have Embiid for say 55 where everybody else has them at 50, but yet on the other hand they're also going to have everybody else
right
similarly higher. So again, I like to aggregate information, like I've said. So anything I can get that's a little different for me to kind of throw into the mix as far as that goes, I think it's pretty important to be different.
Yeah, I would agree. A couple other guys who just stand out as being a little bit maybe better plays over here. Yeah. We both everybody likes Josh Richardson, and I like Josh Richardson too.
Okay.
We'll talk about my plays that I like across DFS when we get into my actual lineups. In the meantime, we're going game by game, just talking about both and sort of giving you an idea of the whole slate. But yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty remarkably different at the top, and neither site has especially screaming value today. Even though we've got the Thon Maker, we've got like some guys. These are not like guys who are blowing it out of the water with their projections. That they're just so must plays, especially not on FanDuel. On DraftKings, they're a lot better than they are on FanDuel. Is the truth. Anyway, we'll get to just real quickly. Going to go through the other games. This Heat Hornets game. Any original thoughts just on like from a betting perspective?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have it. So I don't know if BetQL has a real strong opinion on this, but I looked at this in preparation for this, and this is probably the one game if I had to make a sports bet that I would do it on based on my style and the way that I used to play sports and I would play sports. Again, I think that a lot of people share the same projections and the same statistics. So I kind of look for things that maybe or may not be as factored in is kind of like the human element, meaning like the letdown and what teams might be looking forward to and stuff. As I told you the other day, I mean, I used to, when I bet sports, I would plan who I would be playing like weeks and months in advance.
Right.
I mean, I would know like where they'd be coming off of, what their sandwich games would be and things like that. And along the way, I would see how they do in games and play for letdowns and stuff like that. So for me, I think that this would be actually a really, really good spot to just bet the Heat and lay the points. And, what you have in my head kind of keeping the line down is what we went over is that Charlotte has, in fact, been playing very, very well. I mean, I don't know how they've been doing against the spread. I presume they're doing fine if they're winning games outright and going to overtime and with good teams or better teams and stuff like that. So the way I look at it is this, though. I mean, they're coming off of wins against the Rockets, and then 2 days later, they played a big overtime game in a 281-point game against the Hawks. Big game for both teams. And then just 2 days later, they're going into Miami. You want to give me a Miami narrative of traveling into Miami? I'll even throw that into the blender. And for me, it just seems like just a perfect opportunity for Charlotte to just not show up and just get blitzed. And I think that Miami's kind of sitting at home waiting on them. And I think that if I had one opinion on this whole slate from a sports betting perspective, I think that I would just take Miami and lay the 10.
I'm the opposite of you on this one. I'm going to point out a little trend we do have from BetQL that Charlotte's 6-0-1 against the spread in their last 6-7 games, and we were sort of talking about it on air. You look at it, and they've just been playing everybody really close. I heard the breakdown on certain other shows today about how Charlotte needs a different coach and what's with these wild, they're not playing the kids enough minutes, all these things. This coach has got this team as competitive as anyone could have that team. James Borrego's done a terrific job with the Hornets in real-life basketball. And whether or not doesn't get your extra P.J. Washington minutes here and there because he fouls out or whatever, he doesn't foul out, he gets pulled in the first half. He's a terrific coach and they've been competitive. So I would lean the other way, but I would probably look to stay away. I'm not sure what BetQL has, and I can't quite give that information away right now. I'm going to check it before I make my final bets tonight. But I can tell you they did point out that particular trend, the 6-0-1 against the spread in their last 7 games. And I think that's a really important one to notice this time of year.
It's going to be great because we're when coming from DFS where you have to kind of talk me into narrative and the human aspect. I'm kind of all statistics driven pretty much.
Yeah.
But I've learned, right, in the sports betting thing, I'm just kind of completely opposite. I'm sitting there weaving these narratives of okay, Hornets are coming off of the two greatest strip joint cities in America between Atlanta and then going straight to Miami and coming off of an overtime win. I'll take Miami and lay the 10.
All right. Yeah, you're fair enough. Actually, it's another good personal way to look at it. Actually, I'm going to answer a few questions from some of our regulars in chat. Actually, over here, Ken Jones, happy to see you. I didn't exactly understand the question that you asked, so if you can please, maybe one of the QLTV people can answer the question a little better than I could. Anyway, I'm still very new here, so I don't know about all the betting packages and how all the combos of the betting structure work. I'm sorry, the pay. I'm talking like I'm playing DFS. The paying structure goes for. How much you're going to, whether it goes for just the sports betting side or the RotoQL side. You'd have to look into that. Obviously, I do both for free. So I don't, sorry, have that answer for you. How many Kings and Pelicans are too much from K9 Bronco? I would say that we've got, I could see as many as 5 or 6. I think that it'd be hard price-wise to do more than that. How about you, Sheets?
Yeah. Ooh, you're fading out. But I feel as though I'm going to relate to a very smart person that I heard on another podcast a week ago. When it comes to stacking games, just make sure you don't, play too much salary from one team against the other. And so with these New Orleans guys, they, while they're good kind of GPP plays to play in stacks, they are not the greatest prices in the world. So I would be very cautious about using too much salary on, say, like a Ingram and a Zion, for example. It's a kind of shorter slate with respect to there are only a few amount of really smash type games. So I might go something like Drew and Ingram, and I don't know if that makes any sense, but the reason why is I think that they might correlate a little less maybe than the correlate. Might take a little bit. They might not eat into each other's production the same as maybe Ingram Zion. Maybe it's kind of close. I would definitely not go three players. The only way I would go three players from New Orleans is if, and we can have this discussion, is if whether we're going to put Nicola Melli in with that group. As far as Sacramento goes, I think similarly, I think that two is plenty. I don't think I would go with Hield, for example. Well, I think Hield is an elite play as far as stacking goes, and I also think that Bogdan is kind of an elite play as far as stacking goes. So for me, I would make sure that if I were stacking this game, I'd have at least one of those guys in all of them. So if I wanted to go three players, then I'd have to find some excuse of why I'd like, I don't know, Harry Giles or somebody like that. But I think two from Sacramento is plenty, and I think that probably two from New Orleans is plenty also.
Sheets, I'm not really sure what's going on. I think the screen might be a little bit frozen here. We're going to try to keep answering questions in chat in the meantime. So if you can sort of help run that part from this, I don't really understand. I haven't had this issue before, and so far I haven't gotten the official answer from the group yet, whether it's frozen, but it looks frozen. Does it look frozen for you?
I mean, what I see, I don't know. I see myself talking about 15, 20 seconds.
Okay, perfect. Then we're fine. It sounds like Kenneth and Jones says no, so let's keep going then. For some reason, it's showing up as just a rotating screen on my end, but maybe if I refresh it or something, it'll fix. Anyway, guys, let's get back to it. You see, I called my lineups up here. We'll get back into some straight sports bets in general. We also want to keep answering the questions, but Sheets, give me your thoughts on my lineups over here. Criticize me, tell me what's wrong. These are my early builds, so we don't know yet. But what do you think? What do you like? What don't you like? Give me some first thoughts.
Yeah, if with that first lineup over there, we might have to we might have to answer some questions if that hits. So we'll I love that.
I forgot about that actually. That was my natural build. I was going through it at the same time you were. So I'm going to change that. I mean that's just an outline for a potential way to go.
No, totally. And it was funny because I was rotating in and out of that for that 8K spot between Zion and then who the other guys, Butler, and there was another guy at 7,800 that I kind of threw in also. I basically made four lineups not exactly like that, but because mine and Ingram, I think it is a little different. But I think the concept is very important. That if you can get what do you get from those three? If you can get those 3K centers to work, right? So the one way that you could attack it, like we talked about, is you get to play Luka. You know what I mean? You get to play Luka along with these other studs if you could play the 3K guys. But this could be the real way to play because that's what everybody's going to do. Not everybody. That's what a lot of people are going to do if they bother putting 3K guys. But remember, the difference between having an 11K guy is that you then make it a little less easy to take some good 8K and 9K guys. So if you think that Luka's fadeable, which you've discussed, we discussed several times, you kind of intimated that he's certainly no lock on a back-to-back, and he's going to be so high owned that this could be a very differentiating way to do it. Now, you don't have to use these exact players like I'm saying, but this idea of using this extreme value and not going all the way up to the highest priced player is I think, a really sharp way of approaching it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's just sort of something I'm floating around with. The Boban, before everybody comments on the 65%, that's not something I expect to be at the very end, but I do, if he's starting I would be there. I would be higher possibly. but I don't think with him not starting that we can do that. Sheets, thoughts on the Boban real quick?
Yeah, so I if they're starting Boban, I have to play him. I think he just kills it from fantasy points per minute perspective, and it's just going to be tough to fade him. If they don't announce that he's starting, I mean, there's real possibility that he ends up still at 30% ownership and gets 0 fantasy points. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's a tough reality for some people to take. But that's the thing about the Boban. I mean, he's very risky unless you know for sure he's playing because he always has 0 point risk.
Yeah, to play him at chalk when we don't know what's going to happen is just foolish to me. I'm sorry if he's not going to start. I really do, and I think that I'll have some of it. But and especially because I think we're going to get if we get Bradley too, and we have we could even play another guy like Nerlens Noel who at least we know will play minutes, and you're going to get him to fracture the ownership of Boban. An unstarting Boban who we don't know if he's going to play. I mean, I just think that this is a time where you could be a little bit careful. I do expect Boban to play some tonight, but I don't think that it's necessarily even going to be more than 10 minutes. We don't know. We really don't know. Denver does play big. It makes some sense. But yeah, they can play Willie Cauley-Stein though. I mean, there's not really any other. I guess there's other than that against Jokic, it would be tough to find somebody. So I mean, look, I like the idea of it. There's a reason he's in my lineups right now, but just be wary if he's not starting. There may be some other ways you'd want to go. And we say there's nobody else who plays center. I mean, Maxi Kleber is literally like the size of every center in the NBA, and actually a lot of smaller guys guard Jokic on a daily basis.
I'm gonna add a little something here because I think it's important. When I was originally speaking about Boban earlier today, and I was looking at projections and all this stuff, and he was popping such a great value, I was actually operating on the assumption that Willie Cauley-Stein was out. Or otherwise unavailable, and because the place I was looking had a minutes projection of 0 for him, and I'm looking at an update, and it has Willie Cauley-Stein. Now again, this isn't a big deal, but they're showing him maybe a 5-minute projection, but just the fact that he's even active, I think that if Boban is not flat out starting and he's still being owned, I think that would be a terrible mistake.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. All right, so let's get into one other thing. I wanted to talk real quick because we talked already about Sacramento, and we're going to get back to some regular sports bets and go game by game on a few other things. But I just want to point out that I think that over the last it's hit in 5 of the last 6 Sacramento home games, the overs hit. The Pelicans are playing at the second quickest pace. It should be like the blending of everything. So that's why I'm okay with having like 6 players from the game. Everywhere. I really like these under-owned Kings guys. I think people will pick up on it later, but they'll still be low-owned. It's just something I really like doing. I would like to change the lineups I have now just to get more of them in there. I have Fox, who's going to be the chalkier one, but I really like both Bogdanovich and Hield tonight as low-owned options. So just wanted to point that out, and it sort of leads to the over-hitting. Like I think this is a game where we'll get back over to the other screen real quick for a minute. I think this is a game where it's what is the over we got now? It's
233.
233. No, I've got it at I've got it at 233. 232.5. I would like the over in this game. That's a bet I feel very comfortable making. Obviously, that's a high total. I think this game goes over that total. Most of my lineups are going to end up hinging on that game. I have it in my script where I have to have a minimum of 1 player from each side. However, I did do some hand builds where that may not have been the case, but that's the goal, is to have at least 1 player from each side in that game, probably 4 to 5 total from that game. I think it's really the game you want to target, and I would like to bet the over just straight away. How about you?
Yeah, so if you wouldn't mind me being a pain in the neck, just to give people something to think about. When you speak about trends, about teams that are X and X in a certain, the last 7 games against the number and things like that, I think it's important to know when you analyze that how much they did beat it by, because if in fact that your last 7 games you were within like a point of the over/under, and just variance happened to have put you 1 point over 7 times in a row, I think that people might put a little too much weight in those types of trends. The second thing I would mention is that, again, I don't want to tell people it's impossible to win, but these trends also are pretty well reported. You know what I mean? So I do think that these types of things are probably incorporated within the numbers somewhat, what the trends are. But, and again, these are things I've thought about over the last 20 years, so forgive me for putting them all out now, and I'm not going to put them all out now. However, the other way you could look at it is if a team is over by, let's say, 8 games in a row or something like that, all else being equal, it could very well be that the lines makers haven't quite caught up with like new ways that teams play, and they're using kind of like older models and projections and not catching up. And I used the one that you brought up yesterday as an example, the Orlando-Minnesota game, or Orlando-Memphis. I completely disagreed with you on. You were saying that Orlando's made was over 7 games in a row, and I'm like, okay, no problem, just take the under, right? And they were over pretty easily. But the point of it is that Orlando actually has been playing faster, right? Significantly so over the last X amount of games. And I do think that while the fact they went over in and of itself didn't mean much, the fact that they were playing faster hadn't really been factored in yet by the odds makers, So those are the types of kind of cool edges.
But this is the exact same edge.
Not necessarily the fact they just happened to have gone over, maybe by half point, 1 point, but the fact that the pace numbers were up and all that other stuff that you can kind of eyeball and look at statistically, I think that makes kind of a really a big difference. So.
That's interesting because this literally couldn't be more similar to the Orlando situation if it tried. You had your Kings are like the most similar, early in the season, playing slow, trying something different. Didn't have Fox healthy the whole time, which they play at a completely different pace with Fox than they do when he doesn't play. And it's also trends that teams make adjustments after the All-Star break. That's the way the NBA goes. So these are both teams that since the All-Star break have been crushing the overs, and it's just clear that Vegas, to me, hasn't caught up. And I mean, they aren't just beating overs. A lot of these games they're up. They're winning. They're getting about like 20, 30 points. I mean, some of them are crazy.
That's an important distinction. I mean, that's very important.
Yeah, and I agree with your overall point, though. Getting back to it, I want to get to some questions from chat. We got Steven Becker in the chat who asked. He said the slow start for the Knicks yesterday and all the guys getting pulled. Basically, the second unit showing a lot more energy. Is that going to affect tonight's slate? It's something we touched on a little bit earlier. Maybe you can sort of revisit that. You're more the Knicks expert than I am.
Okay, first of all, having watched basketball for 1,000 years and having coached for a decent amount of years, the second part of your comment is just kind of obvious. I mean, second unit is always going to show a lot more energy. You know what I mean? Especially when the starters get pulled after 4 minutes and the second unit says, okay, all you 5 go in. I mean, they're always going to show more energy when you do it. So it's not surprising to see them kind of flying all over the court when that happens. That's what second units are just kind of supposed to do. But, second units, when they start, are just kind of a little different. So when you ask, is going to have impact on tonight's rotations, is what I said earlier, I think holds. I do think that it's possible that they make a change in the starting lineup as a result. Maybe on the one hand, you'd say maybe they give Frank Nicolino the start because he had such a much better game than Peyton did. On the other hand, to do that on a back-to-back after playing 30 minutes doesn't seem like makes a lot of sense either. And then the other thing is with the NBA, they also want to play the guys that they pay the most money to also. I think that makes sense also. So I don't think that sitting Peyton is necessarily the way things are going to go. So, yeah, I do think that it might have impact on tonight's rotation in that, again, I think that if they come out and are getting waxed in the first 4 minutes, I don't see why you wouldn't try it again. So I do think that all the Knicks have more risk, for example, than, say, the Pelicans or the Kings or something like that. Now, what that means is that they could be lower owned as a result or whatever.
Right.
But remember, it could go both ways. Like, so for me, from cutting back to the sports betting stuff, like I think Atlanta could be in a really decent position to kick the crap out of the Knicks tonight. For that type of reason, like, for example, let's just say that Atlanta goes up like 12-5 or whatever, 12-4, which is not a big deal, and the guy tries to get cute again and just put all the scrubs in, just to prove a point. The game could be over after the first quarter, So I think that there's a lot going on here where Atlanta's in a really good spot to blast.
That's my favorite bet of the slate is Atlanta to -5 personally. I like that very much. I also think because of the volatility, when you talk about some of the guys who are going to be chalky from a DFS perspective, or semi-chalky, like Randall or even Peyton, if they get ownership, which I think they will, assuming the starting lineup is intact. But I like those guys as plays. I just don't know if at chalk it makes a lot of sense to play guys when the situation is this fluid as it is in New York. Thoughts?
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Another question from Abrasive. Would you be fine playing Fox with one of either Hield or Bogdanovic? I am fine with playing Fox with Hield or Bogdanovic, and I would play Fox with Hield above Bogdanovic, or I would play Bogdanovic and I would play Fox and Bogdanovic last of the three combos.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, I didn't want you to take it to mean that you should always play two of those guys or three of those guys or whatever. But tonight's slate, I know you hate when people say that, like, well, it depends on the slate, it's slate dependent. But on tonight's slate, I think there really are two games that stand out with respect to total and stackability and things like that. I think that you could be a little more, I would say creative, but you could be a little more forgiving with overplaying guys. So I think tonight you can get away with more with respect to the two Pelicans or the two Kings or maybe even a third one. So tonight I think you could play two of either of those three between Fox, Bogdanovic, and Hield. I'm kind of more of a purist when it comes to this because I like to have the point guard to be able to also get the assist passing to the dude that shoots, and maybe like Bogdanovic and Hield being more shot dependent. Whenever one guy's shooting, I'd be like, oh man, why didn't the other guy shoot? So I'm probably more inclined to be a Fox Bogdanovic and a Fox Hield than a Bogdanovic Hield, but I don't want to be that nitpicky tonight when you have a 233-point total.
Yeah, especially in these guys are not like we're not like talking about the chalk of the slate exactly. You know what I mean? These are interesting pivots. But yeah, I mean I totally get where you're coming from. Wanted to get another one in from Eric real quick before we go back to some of the other games. Eric said, I just lost the question actually. Oh, if you were stacking the Dallas game, would you run it back on the other Denver side with Gary Harris? Personally, I'm fine with Gary Harris on these slates. Gary Harris is 40 whatever 100. Nobody's going to play him, and he's hit over 24 and a half in 6 straight games. Gary Harris is definitely an off-the-board play you should be looking at in tournaments tonight, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's again, this is what makes horse racing, I guess. He's not for me. I'd probably just try to find somebody else at 4,500 if I needed to play it. I wouldn't use him as a run back per se. I mean, if I'm going to play Luka, like for example, Denver's a 3-point favorite this game.
Yeah.
I guess so. With Chris
That's the other bet that I like the most is Denver to win this game.
Like Denver, that's interesting. Can I give you one?
Dude, that's one of the. That's a tough back. That's a tough one on a second of a back-to-back, even in Dallas. It's a tough one.
Yeah, I want to give you an observation from someone who hasn't played DFS as long as I've been, doing sports stuff in general.
Mm-hmm.
The DFS players, here's what they all have in common. I think like almost unanimous.
Careful.
I'm not doing that. So DFS players, when they analyze sports, this is usually what happens. The high total games, they like to bet over, and the low total games, they like to bet under. And when one guy is out, they like to play the other team. All right, and it's. I've just noticed it just from hearing people talk sports and hearing people DFS guys do whatever, to the point where when on some of the other shows when they're like, well, if you like one over under, which one would it be? And they would say, well, I like this one, and it was a 230 total. And they didn't even ask whether they liked the over or under. They just presumed that they were going to like the over.
Right.
And likewise, when they talked about an ugly game that was like a 208-point total, and they said, well, which one do you like as far as an over-under? Well, I like this terrible Charlotte-Miami game. They don't even ask whether it's over or under. They just presume that it's the under. So that is one thing I have noticed. I've
noticed that as well. I think it's an interesting point. Just to get in that game real quick, I want to talk real quickly about the Dallas and Denver game because you seem to be on the other side of it that I was. I like Denver in this game to play a little better than they've played lately, and I like the way that they match up with the current construction of this Dallas team without Porzingis and Curry. I would pick them to win this game. I do feel like it's a little surprising to see them as a 3-point favorite on the road at Dallas, but I think it makes enough sense. where I can get behind it. May not make the bet myself, but it's one that I'm kind of interested in. And from a DFS perspective, I think if you're going to play Luka, the guy I'm going to run it back with is Jokic. Just is going to be the main answer. The other answers would be Barton or Jamal Murray for me, and that's most of it. Although Millsap for a large field GPP, that's about it. Sheets, what were you about to say?
No, but for me, it was the opposite actually. If you put a gun to my head as far as the sports betting for this one, I would actually say Denver, because the way I kind of look at it is this. Kristaps is out, but I think people underestimate how important he has been. I mean, he has been so good that I think that people are actually underestimating the impact of him being out. So likewise, Denver has been playing like pretty bad recently. So I think the public might be a little bit kind of weary about playing Denver in general, just because they've been, like you said, they've been losing at home to Golden State, doing whatever. And they played that ridiculous game against Milwaukee. They really haven't played well. So if you had to put a gun to my head, I would actually play Denver as far as sports betting angle.
Yeah, so actually we're on the same page on that one. All right, so another couple quick things. I wanted to talk really quickly about, we got a question about who's the best cheap guy to fade today. I think there's actually an argument to be made that you can play all the cheap guys or none of them. And I really think that none of them makes just as much sense as playing all of them. I think there's a lot of volatility with Thon Maker, even though he's been good in these spots so far, sort of when we've seen it, although this is a little bit different now. I would say he's the safest one. Boban is the highest volatility, but will be lower owned probably. The one I'm going to prefer the most is if Gobert's out, I'm going to really like to get the center from over there. For some reason, I can't even think of his name off the top of my head. Why do I always forget this kid's name? The young guy for the center, the backup for Utah. Bradley, thank you. Bradley would be the guy I would prefer the most. I think that he would have a bigger minutes upside. I think he would play minutes because you have Adams on the other side. I think he's good. I think he's got he plays 14, 15 minutes anyway. And I think he would be a really good play. I also would like Royce O'Neal, not on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, because he's cheap enough, and I think the extra rebounds to go around can give him enough of a boost where one of those overlooked guys at 4K who can get you 25 fantasy points might be good enough today to pair with your Maxi Kleber.
Well, my view on the 3K guys is this. So if you're going to fade all of them, which, hey, you can do whatever you want, then you know what you're doing. Then we're playing stuff like Brandon Knight or Jordan McRae or what's the 4K guy from Utah, Jordan Clarkson. Then you're probably playing guys like that. I mean, you can't play no value with some of these guys you want to get to. But I think these 4K guys are pretty decent. Like the Melly play could come into play. If you want, you could do a direct pivot. You could play Nerlens Noel at a similar price if you wanted. But if you don't play any of those 3K guys, you are going to have to play some of these 4K guys. And these plays are not the worst, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's it's hard to – it's – all this, people keep saying there's all this value. We don't really have any value. Just like it's all mostly like we're making it into value. It's not naturally made 8x value like we've had before at times. This is a time where you can talk about middling lineups, even though I haven't gone that route for the most part. But I think it would certainly make some sense today. I'm going to get into my FanDuel lineups in a minute. Now, I want to talk real quick about FanDuel because I actually do have more Luka just because he's lower owned over there. And I sort of like this paying all the way up at point guard thing. So all my Luka so far is currently with Trae Young. You'll see it in just a minute. But I really like, I'm just going to scroll a little bit so people can sort of see all of them really slowly. I like Fox. I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with the Lonzo Ball thing, but sort of a middling build to talk about would be this one right here, where I didn't really take any of the stars, but I took a lot of the middling guys who make a lot of sense. You can call Kleber a value play, which is fine, and Josh Richardson, but I really like this lineup a ton if we can get that game from Ball like he's been playing. It's a lot to ask for, and realistically, I'll probably turn that into Chris Paul. I think I'm going to take Luka out and just leave him in one of the big lineups with Trae Young, and that's sort of where I'm at for right now on FanDuel. I don't really mind him as much. He's going to be lower owned, which is interesting. And I'm running him back with Jokic in those lineups. And I just think that's going to be a lower owned combo over here than people think, especially when you factor in the Trae Young's, the point guard also. Means you have to gamble on some cheapies like Jay Crowder and Dorian Finney-Smith and Jordan McRae and Bogdanovich, but I'm willing to take that chance.
Two things. One, I don't know if I played Melly and Zion in the same lineup. That's.
Yeah, I totally disagree. I think that Melly's minutes only are affected by Favors. They've basically been splitting minutes exactly, and Melly plays partially because Zion creates so much attention down low. There's assist upside, there's connection upside between the two of them, and I think Melly's. That's my personal take on it. Go ahead.
I want to draw your attention to something that Bruce has said in the chat. Rozier is now listed as questionable.
That's huge. Do we happen to know what the question? Let me see. I haven't looked at my update on that. I haven't. Do we know what the questionable is? Because part of the reason I'm off on. You know what happened with Rudy Gobert? Can we get into this for a minute? First of all, everybody like and subscribe. Before we get into the Terry Rozier thing, Rudy Gobert is the reason I partly am assuming he's out. This guy goes at a press conference and specifically at the end of it makes a point of rubbing all the what's it called, the microphones, and talking about how he's not worried about getting sick. Now he's out with an illness. I mean, just a dumb thing to do, and also like really, really weird too. So, just wanted to point that out. If Rozier's questionable illness, I think we can safely say that we don't want to play. We want to try and figure out what the best angle is to go over there, and it's going to be a little tricky. We won't have any projection systems to help us out. So let me get my thoughts behind it a little bit, and we're going to have to deal with the potential no road. Then we would have real value, I guess. What would happen for you if Rozier's out? Is there a first thought that comes to mind? I mean, obviously Devontae Graham is going to get more usage. It probably gives everyone an uptick. Do we just then all of a sudden we're playing both Caleb and Cody Martin all over the place?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably, but especially Cody, right?
I don't know, man. I'm recency bias special right now. I killed it with Caleb the other day, so
it's weird to me because I think Caleb is the better player. I really do. I just think he was injured for a minute. I don't really know why he's not played more, but he was considered the better player in the earlier part of the year.
I honestly don't know who I'm rooting for when those two are on the court, and one of these days someone's getting a $100,000 stat correction because they give it to the wrong guy.
Yeah, somebody's also going to win a big one probably too because they're usually around the same price.
Right. So okay. Aside from Devontae Graham, who's extremely obvious, yeah. I mean, who are the other guys from Charlotte besides those white? The Caleb and Cody? Is there any guys we not looking? Is Dwayne Bacon starting to get minutes again?
Bacon is not even on my player thing, but I think Bacon might play tonight. Like.
That's what I'm saying. I'm looking at guys literally that have 0 projected minutes right now.
Yeah, I would say that Bacon, yeah, that's a lot of minutes. I mean, we could see more of, Jalen McDaniels. I know that's a weird thing, but you sort of have, he's already sort of a guard anyway in Graham. Maybe probably not McDaniels in this one.
Well, you know what you can do? I mean, I'll tell you what you can do. You could go play Miami minus the 10 right now on spec, and then when Rozier gets ruled out, you would have made yourself a point. Probably.
Yeah. Interesting. But I don't know that would, we've talked about how teams have rallied in that situation before.
Yeah, they rally behind when good players are out. Terry Rozier stinks.
What are you talking about, man? He's fine. Look, this team has played above their head this year. They deserve a little bit of credit. This team has no business. They should have won 15 games the whole season, and they've already won 20-something. All right, here we go. Let's see. We've got a few other thoughts that I haven't caught up on. Thoughts on Bam. I think he's a really good long shot tournament play. And by the way, I think Jimmy Butler is another guy I'm fading mostly that other people are into, including Sheets. I don't even know that he's going to play, by the way, either. But I'm not into Jimmy Graham myself today. I do like Bam.
Yeah, I'm less interested in Butler if Rozier is out. Because again, I'm cementing my idea that this game is trash. So I don't need Butler to get me. In other words, I'm not going to play him if I need a ceiling out of him. If the rest of my lineup is wackadoo and has incredible upside, and I want to put Butler in, I have no problem with that. But I'm not going to start with a Butler lineup, hoping that I don't think I'm going to do like a Butler Graham mini stack and just hope that gets me the upside I need, because Graham will be chalky. I'm presuming Rozier's out, right? So for now, if because Graham will end up being chalky, Butler will end up chalky. So you stack chalk with blowout risk. That's not my thing. So I agree with you. I don't know how much Butler I'm going to end up with, if at all.
All right. Any Mitchell Robinson love? I'm a little personally worried about the back-to-back. He actually was questionable with an illness yesterday. I think illness has a different meaning today now that we have games already, being played that are about, as of tomorrow, going to be played without fans. So what do you think there? Mitchell Robinson, I would like to be into it because of the situation, but I'm just not that into it.
Yeah, he's going to lose me to Slate, I'm sure. I'm sure on whatever decision I make on him is going to be wrong. Between FanDuel, it's going to be between him and Steven Adams for that mid-range spot. And I don't know exactly where I'm going to go yet. I think I might, like if Gobert is out, I think I might just take Adams, and just have a little bit of an easier game. Not that Bradley's bad or anything like that, but
no. Yeah, I know what you mean.
I think I might just do that. I think that there's a lot more volatility with the Knicks, as for all the reasons we've discussed.
Yeah, I want to jump real quick to another game we didn't really get into. Well, I guess being that game, but we didn't really talk about the spread in this one. And I was just curious, like, what your thoughts are. I personally, the Thunder are an amazing team because they are incredible against the spread. And here's another thanks to BetQL. I had a little handy trend that I got. They're phenomenal against the spread in general, except for when they're favorites at home. They're exactly 500. So that doesn't really do much for us specifically tonight, I guess you'd say. But that is weird that they're always great against the spread except for when they're favorites at home. And I was sort of thinking a little bit like I would be thinking more on the Jazz. If Gobert's out, I'm not like worried. I still think the Jazz will be fine. But I don't know where I stand. I think maybe now I would lean a little more Thunder. Sort of going back and forth. Probably not going to bet it. But what are your thoughts on that game in general?
Yeah, I would like to say that one of the sites that I look at for projections now is projecting Gobert as out. So I don't know if there's any news that's come out or whatever it is, or they're just presuming he was out for the purpose of projections and stuff. But one place that pretty well respected is projecting him as out, where they otherwise earlier had him in, and they moved Tony Bradley up on the list. So I think we could start really just getting on board with this idea that he is going to be out, or at least prepare for it in real sense. If anybody sees anything online about that, next couple of minutes, obviously let us know.
Yeah.
But I guess the one thing I will add is, again, my kind of weird play is now maybe not quite as weird as it was. Maybe Ed Davis actually becomes in play. 20 minutes maybe at 3K. Possible. I don't know. Again, maybe you don't need it, but who knows? Maybe you do. I'm certainly going to give him a look, where otherwise it was just kind of like a mad scientist idea. So he's certainly going to get a look from me. And I do think that Gobert being out impacts Utah. Now, here's another idea. I mentioned earlier that I think that Utah could have a problem in this game with Gobert out because he's the only guy that plays defense. And you reminded me that, Royce O'Neal's a really elite defender. So maybe in a weird way, if Gobert is out, that they have to play O'Neal more to play more defense. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing an angle out there.
I would get going on the over personally.
Okay. I
think I'm more on that side. I just think the game will play maybe a little bit quicker. Yep. The spread's already changing already, by the way. I think, what was it, 2.5 before? I don't remember what it was. Oh, no, yeah, I think that's what it was, something like that.
I have it at 3 now, but that could still update.
I got a 3.5 on a couple different sites. But, yeah, still, it's just another little thing to make you feel maybe a little bit more like Gobert isn't going to be playing tonight. All right, let's get some other thoughts and questions in. Guys, get them in before we're done. We're going to be out of here in a few minutes, so let us know what you got going on. We're ready to make some money tonight. Any other lineups you want to see? Any other thoughts? Any other questions for Sheets and I? Anything we could do better? Anything we could do worse? One thing that we heard from someone in chat, he says he thinks that Boban plays 14 minutes and he's well worth it. That's possible. I think with this other value that we're going to have opening up pretty shortly, it's going to be a little less of a priority, which makes it a better tournament play. And, if you're not fading it, I love the play. But fading it is what I would be doing for the most part.
Eric, you tell me. Eric's asking what's our favorite stack tonight? Okay, is that just a TO or just what's your favorite to stack tonight? You watched the video. You've seen what we've gone over. You tell us what you tell me what our favorite team to stack is.
I'll bet you. I think everybody knows by now. In case you didn't watch the other ones, that it's the Pelicans and Kings. We're both heavily on that side. I think there's a ton of places you can get different in this game. It's really nice, guys. We really appreciate that the viewers are going up today, and just that we got more of you in here. It's going to keep going that way. So let's get the questions and the dynamic going while you can, because we'll always remember you when we're big and famous. No, just kidding around. But
Tony, first 30 should always get T-shirts.
I'm with you. I agree with this. Guys, give us the like. We got to come up with some Bobby and Sheets T-shirts in addition to the QLTV and BetQL stuff.
What I got to do? I got to cheat a little bit. I got to like it myself. See, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. All right, man. Well, what else have we got going on? So let's see. We went through the games. We did go through the lineups. I want to see what these guys are saying. So what's up with Rudy? They're saying he's got the answer to that, Ian, is that Rudy is questionable with an illness, which he was making fun of the other day. So that was weird. Let's see. For the team, what's your favorite team to stack tonight? Eric's is Dallas. Who else are we playing other than? I guess you could play. You play three of them. I could see playing. You could fit Finney Smith in there. I do like Dorian Finney-Smith.
We don't have to let Eric off that easy. All right. So Dallas is your favorite stack. So we have to compare that to some of these others. Like you said, if you're going to play Dallas as a stack, I guess you'd have to start with Luka, right? So who else are you going to play, right? Like we were saying, you could play Kleber, I suppose, but you're going to try this Tim Hardaway Jr. stuff. I mean, it's you're going to play Boban. It's definitely going to be low owned, but it's I don't know. It looks like it looks like the spot where I just prefer the Knicks or prefer the New Orleans or Sacramento. I'd even rather go with Oklahoma City or Utah. When you're playing Dallas, you're already locked in for 11,000 on one side, and you're not even sure what you're running it back with on Denver, right? You're going to run it back with Jokic at 10K.
It's worth noting that Denver's fully healthy, which for them they're fully healthy. They're not like this all the time. That's why Jokic's numbers have dropped. That's why Murray hasn't had those big games as much. That's why Barton hasn't been quite with the guy we wanted to. But one of them probably has a game tonight. Maybe two of them even. I don't think it's my favorite game to stack. I don't mind the maybe the 3-man mini stack with Jokic, Doncic, and then get the small forward in there. I guess Boban too. But it just depends on where you want to go. I think that falling too in love with Boban this early before we don't have the rest of the information is a definite mistake.
Ooh. Okay, Steven. Now this is something I was going to lead with. I'm very glad that you brought this up. So I'm going to answer your question with another question. All right. So with the real possibility that multiple teams end up playing in front of no fans, starting with the Golden State game, here's the insensitive question I would like to pose to the sports betting community in general. So since sports betting has been alive, they have been assigning a certain advantage to teams that play at home. Whether it be in football, basketball, baseball, the home team always has an advantage. And the home team always is favored as such. So the question is always, why is it that a team has that home court advantage? It's got to be a mixture, right, of the existence of the fans plus mixing in the travel and the exhaustion of traveling, and in some cases the sidelines involved in being familiar with the particular court. So the question I would pose to you is, if you take one of those factors out, that being the fans, I wonder how the home court advantage is going to be impacted, both with respect to actual results, and second of all, whether the lines in these games is kind of reduced a little bit, and they take away some of that home court advantage because of the fans. Now, of course, unfortunately, it's going to take a decent sample size to come up with the answer, and unfortunately, I really don't want the answer, because that would mean that we have an incredible sample size of teams with playing in front of no fans, and I do not want that. But I think that intellectually, I think it's a very, very interesting question as what impact actually having no fans will have on the performances of these teams. And I guess the implication of what you're saying, Stephen, is, are some players from a DFS perspective going to be more affected or less affected by the non-existence of fans in the arena?
Yeah, it's. I think that's one we're gonna have to talk about on a slate where that's actually happening, because it's a long one, and I don't know what's gonna happen with that. I don't know that it necessarily takes away the home. I mean, it does, sure. Technically, it should take away some points from the home team, but you still are on the road, and that's more to be what it has to do with. I don't know, man. We'll see. It's going to be. We've never had to experience this before, exactly. So it's sort of uncharted territory for everybody. A couple other guys. I'm just taking a quick look at that we maybe should be looking at for GPPs tonight. Guys who I didn't have before. I maintain that Royce O'Neal on FanDuel is now in play because there's a weird, like if you want to play someone along with Kleber, double punt the position, he would be an option for me, assuming the Gobert's out. On FanDuel, I really like just trying to stack up that New Orleans game. All right, and I don't mind the Jokic Doncic run back just because I think it's going to be lower owned than it will be elsewhere. But I don't want to be so high on Luka because I'm not that high on Luka today, but I will play him in one of my three big lineups. If I was playing one lineup, I would not play Luka, but I sort of like the Trey him in combo. I also think that I think RJ Barrett is sort of growing on me at 4,800 on FanDuel. Just a guy I'm looking at over there that I hadn't considered. The only thing that worries me is that I really like the pivots that are just above him that are the guys we really like. And the ownership, we haven't had many changes yet, but I'm curious to see where it goes and curious what it does because this first game is going to, this Charlotte game is going to suck. Not the first game, I guess it's the second game. But it's, look, the spread just dropped another point. Rozier, we're going to have to play some real crap from that game, I think.
I don't know, will we? When we say crap, we played Kobe Martin, we played Caleb Martin. We could play him. You know what? You could go with my theory of if these guys are out, you can play the guys who are going to get more minutes, or you could just play the good players who are going to get more usage. You could just play more Bridges and PJ Washington.
Yeah, that's true. It's just the matchup sucks so bad.
Yeah.
Even what you brought up about it, now got me worried about the strip club narrative, as they say. All right, guys.
The double strip club narrative. Atlanta followed by Miami.
Eric Johnson, to answer the question about Embiid, I have 0 Embiid on DraftKings, and I'll have some of him on FanDuel, but I honestly would rather just play Jokic. Cheats, how about you? Wood over Randall in FanDuel? I know you're a Randall guy.
I'm not playing Wood over Randall for no other reason. I think they're probably the same type of play for me, but just the fact that in a GPP I could just run it back. I had the Randall Trey run back is just so logical and easy that I don't know what I would do if I took Wood. That's my only problem.
Yeah. One way to get different tonight. Tonight's playing like a small slate because you're going to end up with chalk. You're going to end up with a lot of chalk, and then there's going to be completely forgotten guys. The forgotten guy, another guy, John Collins. The price is not tempting. No one's going to play him, and he can put up 50 for you easily. So, wait, somebody just asked John Collins right as I said that. I literally hadn't seen that question yet. Yep, Ian, we're same wavelength here, buddy. Guys, last questions before we get out of here because we do only have about 2 more minutes. Let us know what you'd like to see. Let us know what we didn't cover. Any questions you have for today. I'm going to leave the chat open even after we shut it down, just so I can answer the rest of the questions that everybody gets to, because I know it's a little bit of a delay. But Sheets, why don't you just talk about your final thoughts on this slate and what you think? Yeah,
I've not really wavered from my original thoughts as of yet. In that this is where I'm going to go now. So I think these 3K guys, like you said, are going to be the key to construction, meaning how many of them you play. So I think you could make cases for, like you said, playing 3, playing 2, playing 1, and playing 0. And if you play 0, remember, if you play 0 of those 3 guys, you do not have to get fancy elsewhere. You know what I mean? Look, it's going to be difficult to do it, but if you can get solid guys, you don't have to throw that off the board. If you're fading all 3 of those 3K guys, the one thing again, also with these 3K guys, there are direct pivots. Like this Nerlens Noel thing certainly could be a guy that does it. Or I don't want to say Ed Davis, I really don't. But I think that if you are going to fade the 3K guys, maybe you go the way that we discussed. Maybe those 4K guys instead of the direct pivot to other 3K guys, you move up to, like, what are these guys that we just mentioned? What are the Charlotte guys? The Caleb Martin, Cody
4,044.
How much?
4 and 44. 4-44.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe you do that, and you know what? Their ownership is probably going to be kept low because of the ability to pay the $3,000 for those other guys. So maybe that's something you could do. So I do think still that those two games are the elite games, the Atlanta game, which certainly carries a little more risk, and the Sacramento game, which, I mean, it's got everything going for it in that, number one, it's a late game, so it lets you be flexible if you want to screw around a little bit later. Number two, high total, low spread, and the one side of the game is not going to be highly owned. I mean, I think that the Pelican side, you're going to get, like, for example, I'm not saying Ball's a good play in and of himself, but Lonzo's going to be so low owned in that game that if you get that thing to blow up somehow, and you get Alonzo just kind of doing his thing, making some threes, getting some, whatever it is, I think that's what you do. You play the Sacramento, I don't want to say chalk, maybe they won't be even that chalky, but you play the higher-owned Sacramento guys, you run it back with some of these New Orleans guys, and I just see it happening, Bobby. I see at the end of the night, was it, oh my God, Drew was 3%, or oh my God, Ingram was only 11%, or oh my God, you know what I mean? Like, so I do think these New Orleans guys project a little crappy. So as a result, they're going to be lowest owned, and I think that's where we're supposed to go.
I'm totally with you. Couldn't agree more. We're going to get out of here soon, but real quick, I'm going to answer a couple quick questions, or one quick question. Hot Duncan Robinson on FanDuel. I don't think I would play him on FanDuel. I actually would consider him on DK. I know he's too expensive, but I'd rather get the 3-point bonus, and I don't want to use up my shooting guard spots with him. All right, guys. Hey, it's been great. Sheets, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks to the people at BetQL. Remember, you can go to betql.co now, enter the code BobbyFi, get 30% off your first month. Also wanted to say download the BetQL app and the RotoQL app just for free. And I'm just going to remind you, there's the RotoQL projections are pretty different than the rest of the industry. So we gave away some of it for free. You might want to check out RotoQL as well. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. For Sheets, I'm Bobby Fi saying we'll see you at the top of the leaderboards.